Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Film Foundations, a collaborative show between Weirding Way Media and Someone's Favorite Productions. I am your co-host, Chris Dashy from Weirding Way Media and the Culture Cast.
And I am Ryan Verrill from the Disconnected and Someone's Favorite Productions.
On this show, we ask and answer 4 questions about a given topic that is surrounding either an actor, director, franchise, or microgenre. And if you clicked on this episode, you know that Meryl Streep is not a franchise or genre. So we must be talking about Meryl Streep, the actress, not Meryl Streep, the director. But on this show, it is our job to entice you to broaden your horizons on film, to encourage you to travel down film tangents and side roads. And if we're here, you know there will be tangents and side roads that you may have never traveled down otherwise. And if you clicked on this episode, we are joined by a guest, my good friend all the way from 80s TV Ladies. She's one of the hosts over there, Sharon Johnson.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
So before we go any further into the episode, Sharon, tell our listeners a little bit about what they would hear if they went on over and listened to 80s TV Ladies.
The 80s TV Ladies podcast looks at female-driven television shows in the 1980s, and we look at them from a feminist perspective from today. There are a lot of really unsung women, both in front of and behind the cameras, from the 80s. And we've been having a great time, not just revisiting some of our favorite shows of that time, but also getting to know and getting to learn about a number of the women who were responsible for some of those shows. So we have guests. We have an ongoing series that's part of our podcast called 90s TV Babies, where we have a small group of folks that were born in the 90s and have them watch some episodes and then tell us what they think. And it's been a joy and just a lot of fun I think for all of us.
You guys have been doing it for what, two years? Going on 3, or is it 1 going on 2? 2 going on 3?
1 going on 2. We're our anniversary. We're at the end of our 2nd season. We launched in July of 2022. So yeah, it's been 2 really, really awesome, really fun seasons.
And, I obviously, you mentioned, 80s TV Ladies, and I think that that's a pretty good segue into what we're talking about on this episode, which is, I think, one of the preeminent actresses of ever, not just the 90s or 80s or 70s, but I think period, with Meryl Streep. So Sharon, why Meryl Streep? Given the opportunity to pick anything, which you and all the guests on this show do, why pick Meryl Streep?
Because she has long been my favorite actress. And I think almost anybody in Hollywood will tell you when it comes to film acting, she is the gold standard. I don't think she really even has an equivalent that's still working today, or even then, even during her career, as in terms of male actors. She can do it all. She can do drama. She can do comedy. She can do musicals. I mean, I've yet to see anything really that she can't do. And I've long been a fan, and always look forward to whatever her next project will be.
And on top of everything else, you're taking such a big actress off the board early. I mean, we're only in the first couple months of this show. We've already had some big names come off the board. And I mean, Meryl Streep, I think in terms of actors that we've done, is the biggest, right?
But I would say by far, yeah.
Hey, Robin Williams is a pretty big one, but
yes,
not Meryl Streep big.
Right.
Not 21 Academy Award nominations big. That number is even hard to understand, even if it's for anything, but then for being an actor, that's even harder to understand. Like, that's just fucking insane. That's crazy. Like, there's nobody else. Obviously, it's a record number for a reason.
And in her case, in my opinion, all well-deserved. And having said that, though, there have been a number of years during the period when she's been nominated where, frankly, they were kind of stretching it a little bit to find other people to put in the category. I'd like to think that's changed some, but it's still not as robust a group of actresses as there could be. But nevertheless, to me, no matter what, she still shines the brightest.
What about you, Ryan? Where do you come in with Meryl Streep? I'm curious.
I am as well, because I tried to look through this list earlier, and I started to feel really timid. I think I've really seen probably like less than 10 on this entire list, and I don't know how. And funny enough, I was looking on my Letterboxd. I think I've only watched one Meryl Streep movie since I started on Letterboxd, which is kind of crazy considering how much she's done in the last, she's kind of been prolific her entire career, but like the last 10 or 15 years, she's done a lot of titles, and it's not, I'm just simply not been able to keep up, I guess. There's one on her entire list that's like one of my favorite movies of all time. But other than that, I'm going to be mostly in the shadows here, just trying to learn from Sharon's leadership here. I appreciate her acting, and I appreciate her primarily. Other than that, I appreciate her as a person. I mean, out of the spotlight, she's not somebody that, we get controversy from, or somebody that's, going to be a bad influence on the next generation of young women or anything. She's kind of just an incredible person, which is really nice to see.
She's one of the examples of people, celebrities who found a way, or maybe made a decision to stay out of the limelight, because unless you really went and looked for her and her family just sort of flew under the radar. I mean, she didn't live in Hollywood. Maybe that helped, but nevertheless, she, even before, the celebrity culture became what it is today, where everybody who's fourth, fifth, 1000th on the call sheet has an Instagram and TikTok and is out there pushing themselves. Her private life was private. She decided to let the work speak for itself. And I've always admired that about her as well.
That for me, so this is not gonna sound terrible. That's the point of the show. I've seen like one or two Meryl Streep movies, and so I'm even further down into the weeds, as it were. But in doing just some cursory research for the episode, I have to hand it to someone who is willing to care for someone in their like dying days of fucking lung cancer, because she helped John Cazale when he was passing away, and like it made a huge impact on her after he passed away. And it's a shame, because John Cazale is a fantastic actor, taken way too soon. But Meryl Streep having like the emotional maturity to do that in her, I guess would be like her mid to late 30s, is pretty crazy. So
I think she was younger than that.
Okay, so yeah, it was set the 70s. So yeah, she was born in 49, I think. So yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I know how good of an arbiter she is for the field of acting, and in terms of being like the person in the entertainment industry to look up to. And there aren't enough of those people, at least not at her highest of high profiles. But I'm excited to see and hear kind of why the things that she's worked on are so important. Because I've seen some of the movies, and I understand that some of her movies are important, but I want to know the why. And before anyone asks, yes, one of the movies is Mamma Mia, and I hate myself. Not because it's Mamma Mia, but because it's not a good adaptation of Mamma Mia, because all the people singing that aren't able to sing very obviously, like Pierce Brosnan, which is just somehow the worst punishment possible for Mamma Mia, is having to listen to Pierce Brosnan ramble through an ABBA song. But I'm excited to see kind of where we go with this conversation, because like I said, I haven't seen enough Meryl Streep to really be able to hold a conversation about her on my own, which I feel like is a shame.
Well, I have the advantage, if you will, of being a little bit older than you are. I'm going to give myself a little bit of
don't look it, but sure, Sharon. Sure.
Yeah, but so I started with kind of her with the beginning of her career and forward, watching her, seeing her in movies. And admittedly, I haven't seen everything. But nevertheless, I've seen just about everything she's been in. And yeah, not every film is award winning. And there was a period where it seemed that she kind of stepped back a bit in her career to raise her 4 kids, and did work more sporadically. But I guess as they got to a certain age, then you started seeing her again. And based on what I've been able to discern, there's nobody in Hollywood that has anything bad to say about her, which in and of itself is truly remarkable. So
it's like being married in the industry for a long time. Like it's the same thing. It's like people aren't married in the industry very long if they're married like at all. So, and I think she was with her husband up until like last year, like literally or something like that,
well,
or they've been separated for a while or something.
Yeah, they separated a few years back, but nobody knew.
Right. She's so private.
Yes.
Which is awesome. Like that, I'm a huge fan of that because one of my favorite actors, Keanu Reeves, is the exact same way. He's like, I don't want, like, the limelight is not something I'm interested in. Take it away. I just want to be able to act and then walk away from it at the end of the day and go live a normal life. And I mean, I applaud people that are able to do that, especially again at her level. Like, she's, I think, is she the greatest actor working right now? She probably is. I mean, if not, she's in the conversation, right?
Yeah, I think so. Just based on the fact, as you mentioned before, 21 Academy Award nominations. I don't know that there's anybody that comes close to that that's still working right now. So to me, she absolutely is.
Man or woman, frankly. Like, I mean, right. I can't even think of like a male equivalent, like really. Maybe Steve Martin. Like, I don't know, but like, and that's kind of on the nose in and of itself, frankly. So, and
granted, the Hollywood has changed insofar as what is a star. Right. Is it box office? Is it awards? Is it something else? Who knows? And also the kind of movies that are being made today are very different than what were being made 10 years ago, certainly 20, 30 years ago. Studios were making films that now may or may not get a theatrical release, depending on, because of subject matter. Studios were making not just crowd pleasers, but they were making all kinds of serious, if you will, films, dramas, family dramas, all kinds of dramas. And studios really don't make those anymore.
Well, and I mean, speaking of that, like Meryl Streep, I feel like for a stretch was known for that too. Like that was her like thing. So I would ask Sharon before we kind of get to the questions, any history about Meryl Streep that you find worth sharing, or that is necessary to know to take this conversation further, at least for us or the audience.
I don't really think so, and because I'll be honest, for a long, long time, I knew nothing about her personal life. I really didn't. Right. I just I saw her on screen, loved her performances, but I really didn't know anything about, I remember the story you were telling about John, whose last name I can never remember how to pronounce, who was Fredo in The Godfather. That was his last role, right. I believe. And then I remembered hearing at some point that she got married to her husband that she was married to for decades, the one she split from. But other than that, you really didn't know anything about her. I think again through her choice. So I don't know other than the work. I don't really know that there's a lot that I feel like I can add to the conversation, at least from a starting point. So we'll see as we go along, maybe.
Well, and I think to your point, we really also haven't had someone that has been deeply private with their personal life, which makes some of this a little bit, I mean, like you said, the work speaks for itself, and her personal life spot on Wikipedia is very short in comparison to a whole lot of other people's that is very, very long, if not its own page with some people. Well, and that's the thing, like Meryl Streep having none of that is a good thing. I mean, it's all a lot of positives as far as I'm concerned. Because again, I mean, it's not like you're alone in thinking that she's an amazing actress. This is the general consensus. I think for once, maybe on an episode of this show, we're doing something where like everyone can agree Meryl Streep's a great actress. Like, I don't think I can't imagine someone, maybe there's one person that's like, no, she's not. Like, who that person is probably has seen something she wasn't good in, I guess, maybe. But I also feel like that might be an impossibility. Like, is there a role that Meryl Streep is not great in? I don't know if that's the case. I feel like that can't be the case.
We'll get to that.
Oh, okay. Oh, maybe there is. Oh, jeez. I'm speaking out of turn, as it were.
Well, no. I mean, as much as I love and admire her work. Nobody's perfect. Certainly some were better than others. And admittedly, I have not seen every single solitary movie that she's been in.
It's a lot of movies.
Yeah, but
it's a lot.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of them. I've definitely seen a lot of them. So I feel pretty comfortable speaking for her.
And to fit on this show, which of course we're trying to introduce people that have never seen any of these to a new sort of subject. As somebody that's as prolific as she is, looking through her filmography, I could totally see how somebody could have been not super young, not super old or anything, and just completely missed out on all of these. A lot of these, especially some of the earlier ones, are more like Oscar baity picks for some of them. And then a lot of the newer ones, if musicals aren't your thing, and if a certain style of comedy is not your thing, you easily could go your entire life and just having missed all of these. So this is, I think, a really good opportunity to shine a light on somebody that's incredible and have somebody that's ingested most of the titles go, let me hold your hand. Let me get you to the appreciation level of this amazing.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good point, I think. So yeah, hopefully we'll in doing this encourage some people who haven't had a chance to watch many of her movies or taken the time to check out a few of them.
So, Susan, I think that's as good a place as any to kind of trot the first question out for appraisal. So, what do you consider to be a foundational title for Meryl Streep as an actress?
I went back and forth on this amongst a lot of things, but kept coming back to Sophie's Choice. That is the movie for which she won her first Best Actress Academy Award. It is the movie that really cemented her as someone who could easily, or seemingly easily, I guess is a better way to say it, perform not just in English, but in speaking in English and excuse me, in other accents, as well as just speaking a whole other language and doing it just flawlessly. For those that don't know, Sophie's Choice is based upon a novel that was published in 1979 by William Styron, who also co-wrote the screenplay with Alan J. Pakula, who directed the movie. It also stars Kevin Kline, who plays her mentally ill lover, and Peter MacNicol, who plays their new neighbor who just moved to Brooklyn from the South. And in this movie, she plays a Polish woman who survived the Holocaust, and in it, she speaks English and German with a Polish accent. Both, I mean, the fact that she speaks Polish and of course English, but then she has to speak German with a Polish accent. So you can understand perhaps why it's just such an amazing performance. But it's also, I just don't even have enough good words to say about this movie. It is a drama. It's heartbreaking. It's luscious. It is one of my all-time favorite movies. And it's one that I remember leaving the theater and I couldn't get it out of my mind for weeks. I then went and read the book, which is also great. But I took me a long time to get her performance in that movie out of my head. And hopefully once you see it and the other folks that are listening to this see it, they'll understand why. Have you guys seen it?
I have not seen it. All I know is that it's not an upbeat film. I know not what the twist of the movie is, but it does kind of have a twist, right? Like the titular choice, as it were. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it ain't like she's going to a fucking restaurant to pick a dinner to choose, guys. It ain't that. It's a lot. I mean, we're talking Poland, we're talking Germany. If you can't tell what we're getting at, it's a World War II movie. A post-World War II movie. I've never seen it, but I've heard exactly what you said. It's like, it's a rough watch, but not in terms of the performances, in terms of the subject matter.
And I hope I'm not putting anybody off from giving it a try, because yes, it is it's heartbreaking on many levels. But the performances, not just her, but also Kevin Kline, I believe this was his first movie, and Peter MacNicol, were just so splendid. And I love this movie so much.
You seen it, Ryan?
I've not seen it. This is a great choice, one I've wanted to see for a long time. Again, it's one of those movies where there's something so famous from the movie, the reputation completely precedes the entire film and kind of overtakes everything. I mean, Sophie's Choice is now just part of the vernacular of many people. So it's one of those things where I've had it on the list for a long time, just not gotten around to it. But hearing the way that you describe her acting in this and it being so early in her career, I mean, the biggest thing that comes to mind is having a director trust her ability to do that is mind-blowing at her age. Like that's the sort of thing that you wait for somebody to be either like from one of those countries and they've been doing it their entire life, or a 55-year-old seasoned person with acting credits longer than most people's resumes. Like it's the sort of thing that you don't really believe can happen until you see it. And I absolutely want to see it.
She had also done another movie, the first movie where she used an accent, not her own, called The French Lieutenant's Woman. And in that movie, it's telling the story of her character, who's an actress in a movie. And so you're seeing the story of the movie and you're seeing her story at the same time. So it's going back and forth between the two. So perhaps they, in seeing that or whether hearing about how well she did in that, maybe that was what gave the filmmakers for this the confidence that she could do this as well. And there were other movies where she had to also learn another accent. And frankly, there was a time when it was almost like it was held against her that she was all hat and no cattle, as they say in Texas. It was just like a parlor trick or something. But which I completely and heartily disagree with, because I think that the what she's able to convey, whatever language she's speaking in her performance, outweighs whatever accent she's speaking in.
And she's kind of known for that, right? She's known for doing the accents and doing them well, which, I mean, yeah, I feel like that's more of a people in the industry being disappointed that they're not that talented, because it's not easy. And especially when you're being asked to do it for the entire film. And here's the thing. I mean, you've kind of already alluded to it. She had done it once before. She'd already won an Oscar at this point, too.
Right.
She'd already been nominated for at least one other one for the film you just mentioned, The French Lieutenant's Woman, but she had won for Kramer versus Kramer, which was only her fifth film, by the way, on top of everything else. Like, that in and of itself is crazy. Like, again, to your point about this movie, the reputation has preceded it, but I feel like that might be doing the film a little disservice in terms of pop culture because of how good of a performance you're kind of saying she has in the film. Like, it's not that I've never heard anybody say that, but I've only ever heard it talked about in terms of the choice that is made. Mm-hmm. But to hear that Meryl Streep is also amazing because she's being expected to do, I'm the dude playing the dude disguised as another dude. I mean, it's effectively that. I mean, it's effectively doing an accent, but then you have to do the accent and speak English as well and speak German. Like, none of that is easy. In fact, that's like accents within accents. So
yeah.
She's a trained professional for a reason, but dear God, that's impressive. As someone who aspires to be able to do accents as well as a trained professional, to be able to just do it is like that. There's nothing more impressive as an actor than being able to not only rise to the occasion, but knock it out of the park.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more.
And I think it seems like Meryl Streep kind of always rises to the occasion, at least for the most part. So, well, that's the thing. Like, if you've been nominated for 21 times, it ain't by accident. It's not like, we should just nominate Meryl again. Like, no, they're making, she's making films that are a choice, that in making those films, she knows it's accenting her abilities as an actor, clearly. I mean, she won an Academy Award in 2011, so it's not like she won all of her Academy Awards in the first couple of years and then was never heard from again. Far from it, actually. So I want to see this film, but this is, I've heard nothing but it's very sad. It's very sad.
Imagine somebody nowadays saying all those nominations are a mistake, or all of those are all of those were gimmies, or just out of respect for her or something.
Remember how many times Leo was nominated? How many times and people bitched and moaned? Imagine if Meryl Streep had been nominated 21 times and it never won. Hasn't Amy Adams been nominated like 7 times or something? It's a ridiculous amount, and I never heard anybody crowing about Amy Adams, but Leonardo guy's not. It's like, geez, calm down.
Yeah, Amy Adams and I'm sure there are others, but Amy Adams and Glenn Close come to mind. They're both pushing 10 Academy Award nominations, and neither one of them has won yet. Hopefully that's in the cards for both of them.
Well, not if Meryl's still around. That's for sure. I mean, so Meryl Streep. Okay, so Meryl Streep has how many films? She has, let's just say an even number, 50. If she's nominated for 21 of those movies, that's almost half, which is not anything I think any other actor can say. I've been nominated for half the movies I've been in, almost half. And that might be, 50 might be a too generous of a number even. It's probably closer to like 35 or 40. So it's impressive.
Oh, absolutely. And again, it was a time when serious movies, but really good movies were being made by studios. And I would imagine that if you were running a studio back then, you wanted to get Meryl Streep in your movie. Back in the 80s and the 90s, and when she was still working as much as she was then, you wanted to get her in whatever movie you had, because her presence just sort of lifts things up for everybody, I think.
If you guys want to hear something even more fucked, Meryl Streep worked and released a film once a year from 1977 until 1996.
Yeah,
which is
years.
Fucking insane. I guess there was 1 year, 1980, where she didn't, but I guarantee you she's probably working. But once a year, every year for that long, it's insane. It's actually insane, and more than likely nominated at least 4 or 5 times in that span. I've got to assume. I have to assume at this point. I mean, it's not one of those things where she's being nominated every time she's in a movie. That's the thing. At least it's not that. Not that I'm saying that would matter, but I mean, there would be some people that might be like, well, if she's in everything, then she's always not. It's not the case. She's nominated like every other time, effectively.
I just did a quick count. From 78 to 95, she has 10 nominations.
Jesus.
Good Lord. Good God. That's half. That's not even fair. Like,
well,
now that's for best and supporting. So that's because she had best and supporting nominations during that period. So.
And I just did a count of her credits that are for film, and that includes documentary and voice acting, and she's only at 80. So even then, to get nominated for a quarter of those, that is crazy. Yeah. That is mind-blowing ratios there.
Yeah, good for her. Like, for real, like there needs to be an actress like this working that sets the bar, sets the watermark as high as humanly possible, especially as early on as 79 or, 82. Because I'm assuming, Sharon, with picking Sophie's Choice, like it still holds up in current day in terms of the quality that actors are putting out now that we expect with like dramatic roles, right?
I think it does. Even before this podcast came up, my participation here, I want to say sometime probably during the pandemic, I watched it again. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It still holds up. It really absolutely holds up.
I'll have to watch it then. Your recommendation holds a lot of water, as it were. Obviously, if you're on this show. Ryan, do you have an answer for this one? Do either one of us have an answer on this one?
I do have one, and I hope I'm not stealing anybody's thunder on a future pick for anything, but I kind of want to list my favorite Meryl Streep role on here and really go deep into something that's very different from Sophie's Choice. And that's why I'm choosing it for this one, because I feel like it's approachable as an acting role to see how good she can be in something, but also as a comedy and as a slight body horror movie. And I think that gives it away for a lot of people.
Gave it away for me.
Death Becomes Her is one of my favorite movies of all time. And not only because of Meryl, even though she's a giant piece of this, but the entire cast chemistry in this, combined with the mind-blowing special effects for when it came out and the way that Zemeckis directs it. This movie is somehow unsung from a lot of people. I feel like still there's a lot of people that have never seen this, which I don't understand, considering Goldie Hawn, Bruce Willis, and that's more, but those are like the biggest parts of this puzzle. And the movie is kind of pitch perfect, like from start to finish. It is funny as hell the entire way. It's got some like like homages to some old school horror in a couple scenes that I think people would adore. But I mean, Isabella Rossellini's in this and she's great and everything is just fun. And Meryl Streep's character is just so full of herself. And it's so perfect the way that she treats everybody around her. And funny enough, I think that is what elevates this role to be even better, because she's so obviously not like that. She is always humble. And the way that she acts in this movie is like, no, you actually have to perform to do what you're doing. And this is amazing. And ever since I was a kid, like I didn't understand a lot of the nuance behind that, but watching it as an adult again, so many times, this is one that not only holds up, I almost feel like it plays better in 2020 and beyond than it did in the mid 90s. I think back then it might have still been like a little bit ahead of its time, which was maybe slightly off-putting for some people. This movie's perfect for me.
I will admit, I've seen it. I am not a horror fan, and this was kind of a bridge too far for me. I was very squigged out by the whole thing, and but I listening to you, I feel like I really need to watch it again. That I'm now at a point where I can probably appreciate it more. Especially as I didn't really know what I was getting myself into when I saw it. So.
And I feel like for me, because we mentioned it a couple times when we did the Tales from the Crypt podcast, it's like such Tales from the Crypt adjacent, given who directed it and given the time that it's coming out, because it's coming out right in the like third season of Tales from the Crypt, which is produced by Zemeckis and a handful of other people. I always look at Death Becomes Her as like the best Tales from the Crypt movie that doesn't have the Tales from the Crypt name attached to it, because it really is, like, in terms of like what it's going for. Yeah, what a good pick, Ryan. What a great pick, even.
It feels like a comedic take on Frankenstein in a lot of the scenes, and I don't know. To me, and I'm much more versed in horror than some others, but to me, like, it barely even comes across as scary, and I think that's why for people even willing to dip their toe in, I feel like this is a really great first title, because she's crossing so many genres, and it's a damn fun. You
have to understand from me, from a horror standpoint, when I was 13, I think, I was probably about 13, and some friends dragged me to a vampire movie, Count Yorga Vampire.
Nice.
The lights go down, the movie starts, the music is playing, I got up and I left. So that's where I'm coming from with all of this.
When I was 8, my parents really stupidly showed me Halloween. And when it was over, my dad tried to pay me $5 to go touch the fence in our backyard. And I said, hell no. And I went to bed.
Oh, that's great. No, but I think I might be ready. I think I might be ready to watch it.
So I thought I didn't have an answer here, but I will say, in terms of the things that I've seen and the things that I like her in that I've seen, and in terms of also it being something that anyone listening to this show would go, you picked that, dude? Well, there's a couple things. I don't talk about it frequently. I don't know why, but I like to cook quite a bit. I read a lot of cookbooks. I do a lot of cooking. And this is very far, speaking of Amy Adams, this is very far from the kind of movie I would watch, not because it's a chick flick, but because it's a biopic. And biopics just, they're not my thing. So, that being said, I think Julie and Julia is a perfectly quaint little film that is, I don't know, it's definitely of a time and of a place. And they've kind of gone back to the Julia Child well recently again, whatever, fine. I kind of thought that this was as far as we needed to go, but Julie and Julia, I think for me, is a good pick because it's further down the road than both of y'all's. So it's, again, to both of your points, showing the longevity of her career, but also, it's kind of the same, kind of different. It's based off of an adaptation of something, but she's playing a real person, which I wouldn't say she's doing a Julia Child impersonation. She's doing a Julia Child evocation. She's evoking the character of Julia Child. She's not doing a kind of cheap imitation with the, none of that shit. There's none of it. She actually nails it in a way that you have to respect, because, again, when given the opportunity to do an accent, so many of us who go down the road of impersonation or doing accents tend to overdo it. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, Ryan and I could go back and forth doing Arnold Schwarzenegger, just amping it up one notch every time. But that's kind of where a lot of people take it. So to see her kind of bring it back from that edge and turn it into like a real person as opposed to this like caricature of Julia Child, I think speaks to her ability as an actor to really ground it in reality. Because it's also like it's a weird movie. It's a biopic, but it isn't. But it's about two women, but it isn't really. Like it's kind of a weird in-between movie, but I don't know. It's fun. I wanted to say it's complicated just to be cheeky, but I saw It's Complicated in theaters. No shit. So, I mean, that's not a great movie, but Julia is. Yeah, I don't know. That was my pick. Again, having had very little exposure, but more of it being contemporary exposure. Like I mentioned, Mamma Mia, not making this first question.
I was waiting for you and all of that to go, hello.
I mean, hey, she nails it.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people tend to, when they think of Julia Child, they probably are thinking more of the character that Dan Aykroyd played on Saturday Night Live as opposed to who she really was.
Yeah. That's what I was alluding to. Like when it comes to like a legitimate, like genuine caricature, that's Dan Aykroyd, right? Like, but Julia, it's much more of again, like an actorly way of approaching it as opposed to a comedic way of approaching it. And look, it's a movie about cooking, and it's a movie kind of about falling in love with cooking, which I also appreciate because, I mean, in a lot of ways, we could be doing a show right now about, getting people who are dudes like us more into cooking, because I know Ryan cooks a lot as well. I've been to his house. I've eaten a meal that he prepared, and I know that it happens frequently. So, I mean, in my mind, like being another thing that's a good, lack of gatekeeping with cooking, Julia might inspire you to take up some cooking. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go start with her book if you've never done anything, but hey, that's not me, folks. But yeah, that's my answer. Not as fun as your answer, Ryan, and definitely not as serious as your answer, Sharon. But I think a good kind of counterpoint to the three, as it were.
Mm-hmm. So that's a nice grouping, actually. It's a nice grouping of performances to see.
Yeah. So any other talk on this question before we go to the next one?
Good.
Okay. Now, Sharon, could you, second question, recommend a lesser-known gem within Meryl Streep's filmography that, while not great for newcomers, would be maybe the next step for someone who's watched Sophie's Choice or the last two movies we mentioned? Maybe where would they want to go next?
Well, I picked something actually sort of maybe for newcomers who maybe are a little wary of something as serious as, say, Sophie's Choice. But and also I think the only one of this kind of movie that she's ever done, but one that I think is very much the most commercial in a lot of ways movie she's ever made, but still one that I really like. When it was one of those ones that never showed up on HBO, I'd be like, I'd sit down and watch the rest of it or whatever, because there it was. And that's The River Wild. She plays she's married. She and her husband seem to be having a little bit of difficulty. They have this family trip they plan to go river rafting in her youth. She was a guide on this river and used to take the raft down, the real treacherous paths of the river. Hasn't done it in a while, but they were going to just sort of take it easy. And shortly after they get on the river, she and her husband and her son are basically kidnapped by these robbers who are trying to get away from. They figure if they go down the river, that'll be an easy way for them to for them to bypass being picked up by the police, because they're not going to be expecting them to go that way. And they happen to hear that she's this expert on this river and is one of the few people, again, years ago, that had taken a raft down the most treacherous path on this river. And they figure she's going to get us out of here. So they all get taken captive. She's got to trying to deal with these two guys, keep her son calm, and her family calm and keep them safe as she is driving, or she is piloting, or whatever you call it, with a river raft down this river. I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. Well, not fun necessarily because of the situation, but it's a crowd pleaser. And I think that would be something that I think a lot of people would enjoy.
I had never seen this, and as you were speaking, I was looking at the cast and getting blown away continuously. Kevin Bacon, John C. Reilly, Benjamin Bratt. Wow, very 90s, very interesting. And
don't forget David Strathairn, who plays her husband.
I scrolled down ever so slightly. My friend Justin LaLiberty, who is from the boutique Blu-ray company Vinegar Syndrome, very short review that made me laugh like crazy. Ridiculous that Meryl was nominated for an Oscar 21 times, and one of them wasn't for her total boss performance in The River Wild.
Yeah, she's great as always. And again, she gets to be kind of a badass in this movie. I love it. It's a lot. It's a fun watch.
It sounds nothing like anything else she's ever done.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jeez Louise. That doesn't sound like a Meryl Streep movie. Sounds like a movie like Sandra Bullock would be in the 90s, right? Like Susan Sarandon, maybe. Like, not Meryl Streep. Not an actor of her caliber.
Now I got to see it.
I'll look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about it.
It sounds fun. I mean, if anything, it sounds fun. And that sounds like that's all it needs to be is fun. What about you, Ryan? Do you have an answer for this second question?
I do. This is one that puzzled me at first, because normally when we do this, it is a lesser-known movie that would possibly turn people away if they went in and watched it first. And as I was looking at the ones that I'd seen from Meryl Streep, one of them really struck out to me as I was going through my list of what people should watch first. And so I kept going back to that. I was like, well, this movie, like, I love it, but if somebody watched this for Meryl, would this be one that they would go, oh, dang, like, yeah, I want to come back and watch every single one of her movies because this is so good. And then I started realizing the reason I'm, like, striking out while considering this consistently is because it's so weird. And that always happens when you're written by Charlie Kaufman, directed by Spike Jonze. So I had to bring up adaptation because this movie, it goes, like, this is going to be so odd to say, and for somebody that's never seen it, you're going to disagree with me just logically, but it doesn't fit in her filmography at all, but also it is the perfect slot in her filmography, and the ensemble cast with this, and the story behind it, and the like overall complete package this film delivers, it is great for being one of those that you watch fully intending to just sink and live with for the next 3 days after and start like making up random theories in your head and finding out what this movie meant to you and how it's going to change your trajectory as a film watcher. I don't want to say too much because it's Charlie Kaufman, so it won't matter anyways because you'll forget by the end of the sentence, but it is such an interesting, great movie, and it delivers a great caliber performance from Meryl. It delivers an incredible performance from Nicolas Cage, and it's just one of those like perfectly written movies. That's kind of all I can say about this one.
I've never even seen it.
And although she wasn't nominated, I don't believe, for this movie, or I'll double check that, but I do know that Chris Cooper won for his performance in that movie.
Yeah.
He was great in that. He was also great in that. So
this is one of those that everything is hitting at 100%. This movie is top notch through and through.
And anything with Chris Cooper in it that's not Muppets is great. I mean, he's great in the Muppets movie too. Or see, that's the thing. Chris Cooper, he only stands out for like one random thing for me, which is October Sky, and I don't know why, but like that because he plays Jake Gyllenhaal's dad in that.
Right.
And then, and speaking of Sophie's Choice, then it turns out he was idolizing a Nazi the whole time, but don't tell anybody that. So, Jesus Christ. I mean, hey, Werner von Braun was. I'm not saying it. The facts exist. This is me just regurgitating it for other people to hear. I can't make this shit up.
And if I may correct myself, she was nominated for supporting actress in adaptation.
Wow. Jeez Louise. Always. Just always nominated. I mean, hey.
I mean, to be fair, that should be the default thought. Was she in that movie? Okay, she was probably nominated.
Which brings me to my answer, which she was also nominated for, I believe. And I think that this is one that, again, I'm kind of surprised y'all didn't mention it. We haven't even talked about it. Sharon, you and I just spoke about a movie that one of the other two leads in this movie is in very prominently, but not the titular character, at least the one that's mentioned in the title. I'm talking about 2006 is The Devil Wears Prada, which like I am shocked nobody has mentioned up to this point, and that it took me mentioning it. What a wild ass movie.
I figured that would definitely come up, but I wanted to highlight River Wild because I figured most people have never heard of it, let alone have never seen it.
That's
fair. A lot of people have seen happily have seen Devil Wears Prada, which is a fantastic movie.
And that's, I mean, to kind of what you were getting at, Ryan, like, I guess I could have really gone out there and mentioned something that like nobody's seen, but like most of her movies are seen by a lot of people. There's not a lot, like even River Wild made money, was well received by clearly more than just one or two people. So it's like we're really having to like dig really hard to be like, well, this is a movie that like 5 less people saw than the other one. And hey, Devil Wears Prada, nominated for Best Actress. So there you go. Once again, in keeping with the theme here.
Let's talk about that underrated gem, The Deer Hunter or something.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like it's like at some point, some of the people we talk about, it's like it's not really a lesser known movie as more as just like it's just another one of their movies. Because when you're putting in as much quality work as Meryl Streep has, yeah, I mean, and on top of everything else, didn't really work in TV up until like hardcore didn't work on TV until 2019 with Big Little Lies. I think she'd kind of done some like miniseries work and other stuff, but she was like a main cast member on Big Little Lies on top of everything else. Yeah, Meryl's. Yeah, it's like what do we say here? Like Meryl Streep, she's been in like everything and she's ever present. I mean, I mentioned it's complicated. She's in Only Murders in the Building now, on top of everything else, like with Steve Martin again. So I don't know, like Meryl Streep's kind of as ubiquitous. I don't know, like as far as I'm concerned, there's nobody as well known for acting in the United States in terms of quality acting as Meryl Streep. And I think our picks kind of prove that because all 6 of the movies we picked were very good films, I'm assuming. We wouldn't be picking them if they weren't.
Agree. Yeah.
That being said, The Devil Wears Prada is a great movie, and if you haven't seen it, you should. I'm assuming y'all have, but
I've seen it many times.
She plays a mean character in the movie, which is why I was maybe a little less willing to mention it, because I think in Julia, she's playing a character that's a lot more welcoming and inviting, and in Devil Wears Prada, she's playing a kind of an ass, which, I mean, that's the point, though. I mean, the point is, like, this is a hard world, and the world is hard, and the people in the world act this way because they have to. But I don't know. I could see someone watching it and being like, oh, do I really want to watch more of that actress? Which would be the wrong answer. But I could see that being maybe a place someone could get to. I don't think that would be the case. But, you know, I think it also has a great cast. It's well directed, has Anne Hathaway in it, has Emily Blunt in it. So, you know, I mean, and speaking of cooking, and it has world-renowned chef Stanley Tucci in it, who's known for all of his Italian food now, apparently. But I like The Devil Wears Prada a lot, so that's my answer. And I think that you couldn't go wrong with one of the 6 movies we've suggested. Not saying that that's not been the case on other episodes, but here it's like we're picking movies that is like, you've heard of these things. Even if you haven't, you have.
When The Devil Wears Prada came out, I was a couple of years removed from a job where I worked for someone in a similar role to Anne Hathaway and Emily Blunt in this movie, where your life was kind of subsumed by this other person. And I'm very happy it came out after I had decompressed and gotten to a place where I could enjoy it, because there were so many things in this movie where I found myself thinking, I kind of been there, done that. And if it had come out when I was still in the middle of it, I know that I probably would have run screaming out of the theater. So, but I'll also, having said that, I also, you know, to me, the brilliance of this movie is, yes, Miranda is a piece of work, and the way that she treats her assistants is not something that most of us would expect to put up with. But nevertheless, not only is she great at her job, but through the writing and through Meryl Streep's performance, you get to a place, at least I did, where you have an appreciation for what she sacrificed, how hard she worked, what she had to do to get to where she was and to stay where she was. So I had very empathetic feelings for her, although I was very happy not to be working for somebody like that anymore.
I haven't watched it since I worked for someone like that, so maybe my opinion on the movie would be a little different. But to your point, I mean, people like that get to that point because of the way that they are and the motivation, the self-motivation that they have. And also, again, the self-awareness. Because, I think, is it in the movie, she goes like 1 million people would kill for this job. And it's like, that's at the back of your fucking mind all the time. And like that comes through in the performance. Again, she's mean, but she's mean to a point for a reason, to get the work done, because she's seen it all and done it all. And, there's nothing that can rattle an ENTJ like her, because that's clearly what she is. And we're talking personality types. But yeah, I enjoy the movie, but it's a little bit of a tough watch. She's not necessarily, the nicest, but that's okay. Sometimes getting to see an actor fully embrace the villain is never a bad thing. And sometimes we get the best performances of an actor's career when they embrace the villain. So I like this movie a lot, but I mean, again, I'm more excited to watch the movies y'all mentioned than the thing that I've already seen 1 million times. And Anne Hathaway's in it. Mention that again. Princess Diaries' own Anne.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right. Let's go to the third question, which is, what is the biggest impact that Meryl Streep has had on pop culture? Obviously, this is a pretty broad question. We can go fairly different directions with it, but Sharon, we kick it to you first. What is Meryl Streep's pop culture influence?
I really had a hard time with this one because she's not a pop culture fixture the way a lot of actors are or have been. She's known for her acting, but really not known and known to be somebody who is very talented and who gives great performances in her roles. And what little people may know is that everybody wants to work with her. All the stories as I said before, that have come out about people who have worked for her, nobody has anything bad to say about her, which is great. So I guess it's in terms of, I'll take this a couple of ways. In terms of pop culture, she is the gold standard. She is the person that if you're an actress and you're compared to her, or you want to be, it's great, or you want to be compared to her in terms of talent level. People think that you're anywhere close to her. I think most actors would take that as a very, very high compliment. So I think from a pop culture standpoint, I that's kind of where I come from with it. But there are two of her recent movies that actually we've already talked about that to me really are the ones that have most sort of punctured the and through the pop culture world into the point where people kind of still talk about those films. And one is Devil Wears Prada. I think that is that's probably one of her movies that today most people are aware of and have seen, as well as Mamma Mia, because of the stage show and because of the music. Now, Mamma Mia is not necessarily always first thought of perhaps as a Meryl Streep movie, but if you've seen the movie, you've seen her in it. You've heard her singing in it. And maybe some people were surprised to find that she has a great voice, that she absolutely can sing, as she's exhibited in some other films as well. But and as far as Devil Wears Prada is concerned, Miranda Priestley is, I think there are lots of memes out there about her as well, as Miranda Priestley. So those are the things I think about when I think about Meryl Streep and pop culture.
It's a good shout, and it kind of leans into the way that I thought about it, especially the Mamma Mia angle. When we talk about Meryl Streep, and a lot of us aren't fortunate enough to have seen much of these amazing actors' stage work, but she's somebody that's done quite a bit on stage as well. And the way that I leaned into this is I feel like she has done more than many others to kind of keep the passion for musicals alive, which is not easy to do in a world where we are actively trying to hide that certain movies are musicals in their promotion. And so I mean, she's done like at least 10 or 12 movies where she's actively sang in those movies. And then not to mention lots of passes on stage, but in your body of work, when you've only done 80 or so films, and if you take out voice work and documentary work, she's at like 70, 73, something like that. And you've done at least 10 or 12. That's a pretty high number compared to most actors, obviously. And if you have the ability to keep giving performances in musicals that are this good, it's clear that you've got a passion for it. And without somebody like her leading the pack, I think a lot of that like blame for musicals would start to dwindle. And I think she's doing good work to keep it important, and it's important to the history of Hollywood. So I'm glad they still exist.
I like your answer. I like both of your answers. My answer is not too creative. It's essentially in line with what you were saying, Sharon, which is as an arbiter of doing the work well, but also not letting you get in front of the work. I think that's the other thing that I think Meryl Streep has clearly done, which is not let her and who she is get in the way of the work and how important the work is. And there are so many actors who 5 minutes of fame goes to their head for the rest of their lives, let alone an entire lifetime's worth with Meryl Streep. And again, best we can tell, not nary a bad word has been spoken about Meryl Streep. And if it is, it's probably someone who lost one of those 21 Academy Award nominations to her, or the 3 wins that she got. I mean, those are the only people that are speaking bad about Meryl Streep, because like, God damn it, she made another movie this year. What the fuck am I going to do? I mean, you've got to think. I mean, you have to think, right? Because that is the thing I was thinking of when we're talking about the numbers game of it all. Meryl Streep makes a case for like your entire body of like, she could have gotten a Lifetime Academy Award at this point, just based on the amount of time she's been nominated, let alone winning 3. But to get to the point where you're nominated 21 times, which means 21 other people have not been nominated because of you, is crazy. Because that's a large group of people that were not nominated. Right. And to Sharon's point, I would make the case that there has not been a misnomination in the bunch, best I can tell looking through them. And if you're the kind of person who can keep your personal life private and be on the silver screen and be considered one of the greats, if not the great in terms of acting, like what else is there to say, really? Like her pop culture presence may not be felt every day, but the fact that we are alive in the same time, in the same place to get to see Meryl Streep's movies for as long as we have, because the 3 of us are still alive and it's 2024, so she's still making movies, is pretty impressive. And the longevity of her career shows you can have the longevity of a career that I think so many people think in Hollywood you can't, and maybe she's the exception that proves the rule. That might also be the case. But Meryl Streep is someone that people want to work with actively. Like Soderbergh worked with her. Diablo Cody worked with her. I mean, so many people have worked with her because it's her. Mamma Mia didn't get made until they were like, well, we got Meryl Streep in the lead role, so now we're going to do it. And it's like that alone, if that is the way you come into something, is if we get this person, it's going to be made, that person's impact is clearly understood by at least a couple people making the movie. And I think with Meryl Streep, like we've all alluded to, when she's in the movie, even if it's an ensemble movie, the movie is better for it having her in it. And there are very few actors you can say that about in terms of their presence on screen alone is enough to elevate this project beyond where it would have been otherwise.
Beyond that, consider how many young actors she has inspired.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And on top of everything else, all the people she's worked with. I mean, she's worked with everybody. Literally fucking everybody at this point. I mean, even as much as I don't know if she'd worked with Tom Hanks before, but she even got to work with Tom Hanks, a couple of years ago with The Post? Like late in the career. She's still knocking out bangers with Spielberg and Tom Hanks at the same time. Like, geez Louise. Yeah, I don't know. Like, the longevity of her career alone is impressive, let alone all the people she's worked with, let alone all the roles that she's done, let alone all the Academy Awards she's gotten. We haven't even really mentioned as many movies as we could have. I mean, we've mentioned like 10, so what it feels like. But she has so many things that, again, are worth mentioning, worth talking about. But again, the stuff that we mentioned, I think is pretty good starting place. So The Bridges of Madison County is never a bad one, I don't think. Again, I read the book. I know it's not necessarily the most popular thing in the world, but Bridges of Madison County is kind of it's a nice movie. I would say it's a nice movie. And in this day and age, nice movies are hard to come by, folks.
I had not read the book, went to see the movie, was blown away by it, and particularly blown away by her performance. Again, in this movie. Yes, she's doing another accent, but this time as an Italian war bride, basically, in 10, 20 years after she moves to the States with this GI that she met over in Italy, living in rural Iowa, I think, somewhere like that. And it is for me one of her very, very best performances. And to this day, I don't understand why she didn't win the Academy Award that year. But then again, I say that every time she's nominated and she doesn't win. But that's another story.
Right. Yeah. Again, nominated for Best Actress for the film, obviously. I feel it goes without saying at this point. I feel like I think maybe the only movie we've talked about that she wasn't nominated for was River Wild, I think. Like, genuinely, right? I think everything else we've mentioned she was nominated for. In terms of our 6 picks, right? 5 of 6. Right? Yeah. Like, well, that has not been the case yet, like, for anybody.
Not Mamma Mia as well.
That's a shame. That's a shame. Yeah.
But other than that...
Because to y'all's point, I was joking about Pierce Brosnan singing in Mamma Mia. His singing's not great, but if you told me Meryl Streep was from Broadway, I'd be like, yeah, sure. Be like, if you don't tell me who that person is and are they a trained actor or singer, she does a good enough job that she can pass for being a trained singer, which is in and of itself impressive. That's the other thing. People like Meryl Streep don't really exist anymore, like multiple threat actors that do the stage, that do the screen, that do the singing. And even in her case, in Mamma Mia, the choreography, I know she's not doing it the way Indian actors in so many of their movies do, but the fact that you're even willing to think about it and do it is a lot. Look, is it disappointing we've never had Meryl Streep in a, quote, horror movie, unquote? Yes, for a number of reasons. But to the pick of Ryan's, I think that's the closest we'll get ever, probably. Who knows? Maybe Mike Flanagan will back up a Brinks truck to Meryl Streep's house and be like, hey, you want to be in a movie, Meryl? It's like, fuck yeah. How much money is Universal trotting out? I mean, I could see it happening. But that's the thing, like, at this point, before we go to the final question, what does Meryl Streep do at this point? Like, she's literally like Tom Hanks. She's done everything. That might be the only equivalent is Tom Hanks. Yeah. Like in terms of a male actor that is as like high profile as she is. And he has also shockingly kept his personal life rather squeaky clean and quiet as well, which I appreciate.
Which shows you it can be done. It can be done. It's harder for some than others, depending on circumstances, but it can be done. So,
especially in today's day and age, I'm sure it was much easier in 1980.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and even into the 90s and into the 2000s, it was easier, but still, yeah. Anyway.
So, any other movies we want to bring up that we didn't get a chance to mention before we go on to the final question? Anything we want to give a shout out to, Sharon, Ryan?
I do have a couple actually. First, Kramer versus Kramer, which is from where she won her first Academy Award. She was, that's the first thing I remember seeing her in. Because I had not seen The Deer Hunter, and she also had done a TV miniseries that I also didn't see before this. I think Kramer versus Kramer was the first thing that I saw her in, and I thought she was fantastic. As at the beginning of the movie, she basically walks out on her husband and her son for reasons. She eventually does come back and try to get custody back. But I love that movie as well, and love her performance in it, needless to say. And a couple of movies that are kind of on the other side of some things that she's done also. First, Postcards from the Edge. Where she played a character that was a book written by Carrie Fisher based on her life. She is plays a character as a daughter of a legendary actress played by Shirley MacLaine, who has just gotten out of rehab, has been sort of acting herself, but is just still kind of a mess. Not only is it's funny, it's poignant. She gets to sing. It's really a terrific movie. And last but not least, Defending Your Life. That was written by and directed, I believe, by Albert Brooks, where they are people in the afterlife who are trying to be determined whether they're ready to, they don't say this explicitly, but move on to heaven or whether they need to go back and try it again. And she and Albert Brooks meet, and it's a delight, and she's great, and she's great as always. A totally different character, totally different kind of performance, very relaxed. She's just, this person who was idealized as this person who never did anything wrong and always helped small children across the street and saved dogs from, kittens from trees and that kind of thing. But, nevertheless, it's a great movie, and I love her performance in it. So those are ones that I'd like to point out.
I'm waiting for somebody to pick Albert Brooks for director, 'cause that's another. It's like
big one.
Yeah, it's a huge one. Ryan, what about you? Any Meryl Streep movies that jut out that need to be mentioned?
The only two that I had written down that were kind of important is the Manchurian Candidate remake. She's not the main draw of that film, obviously, but she still plays a pretty big part, and it's a role that you walk away from feeling like it's a memorable part for her. And then the animated film The Ant Bully. I'm just kidding.
I was like, whoa, dude, that's a hell of a deep cut, man. The Ant Bully, coming out the same year as The Devil Wears Prada. God.
What about you, Chris?
Have you seen The Ant Bully?
No, of course not.
Oh, damn. What do you mean, of course not? Speaking of animated movies, I mean, I don't know if this is animated per se. It's stop motion animation. If anything, Fantastic Mr. Fox, the only Wes Anderson movie I can watch without wanting to turn it off, because Wes Anderson movies are very twee, and that might be the meanest thing I ever say on this podcast, but I have a hard time getting through Wes Anderson stuff because I find it all like, what's the word? Bizarre for bizarre's take. Like, just cause we're going to be weird and quirky. It's quirky. It's quirky in a way that's so obnoxiously quirky. And I can't be the only one. I know I'm not the only one. But Fantastic Mr. Fox, his sensibilities work in a stop motion world. And Meryl Streep is in it. George Clooney is in it. There are people in that would never do another animated thing other than The Ant Bully. For the most part, I mean, George Clooney's not known for doing animated things. Meryl Streep's really not known for doing animated things either. But are these not the two things other than AI, I'm pretty sure, in terms of like voice roles? So I don't know, like Fantastic Mr. Fox is a good movie and it's a great movie. She's in it. I mean, it's not that she's not the big part. George Clooney's kind of the main character, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's a good movie. She's great in it. And it's a Wes Anderson movie that doesn't drive me nuts. So there you go.
It's going to be really awkward when we record that Wes Anderson episode next Monday.
Yeah. Boy, won't it? I'll just sit here and be like, I don't really have any answers, guys. I don't know. I mean, I'm not the only one that finds him quirky for quirky's sake.
I'm right there with you. I have not found any of his movies that I've tried to watch that I could get through, and I have not seen Fantastic Mr. Fox because I find stop motion animation creepy. It just feels really creepy to me, so I avoid that too.
That's fair. I mean, I get that. I understand the horror movie thing too. I was just like, it's creepy. I like that. I mean, hey, that's a valid reason. Yeah, that would be for me. That's that, and I do like August Osage County. I think that's an interesting movie. It's a fun movie per se, but she's great. It's kind of an ensemble cast thing. She's great in that as well. So yeah, I mean, again, like it's hard to not just look at her list and like start talking about everything you've seen her in or things you want to watch her in. Speaking of singing, Ricky and the Flash, I think is also worth mentioning. Another, again, you were talking about it already, Ryan. I'm kind of surprised you didn't mention it. Speaking of her singing and doing music, that's another one specifically of those movies where she's going out of her way to do singing and being, portraying a musician. So
if I'd seen it, I probably would have brought it up.
Right, exactly. You can't go wrong with Meryl Streep, I think is what we're kind of alluding to here, folks.
Everything somebody makes isn't excellent because, she, in this case in particular, she's the actor. So there's only so much she control over it, all of it she has. Right. Some of her movies are better than others, as with anything else. And sadly, she was not nominated every year that she made a movie, but, pretty close. So There may be one or two in there that are not as good as others. So
well, and just because I know he'll have to put it in the show notes, She-Devil, starring Meryl Streep and Roseanne fucking Barr. That's a movie I'd like to watch just based on who's in it. and I mean, Ed Begley Jr. and Meryl Streep and Roseanne Barr. I mean, sign me up, I think. Yeah. Meryl Streep's got to even out the Roseanne Barr of it all, I hope. Maybe not. Who knows?
I did see that one, and honestly, I don't really remember anything about it.
Maybe she doesn't.
This poster is atrocious.
I know the poster's too much, isn't it? The poster's hilarious. Like Roseanne Barr going on the side of Meryl Streep is just like trying to choke her, I guess, is just, boy, 1989 called and they want their fucking poster design back.
To show how much it's a product of its time. One of the actors listed on Letterboxd is Sally Jesse Raphael.
Oh my gosh! Wow, I had forgotten about all of that. Wow.
Yeah, well, she didn't really make it too far out of the mid 90s, thankfully. So let's go on to our final question. What is a cinematic bridge to Meryl Streep? So if someone else liked this thing, they might also like Meryl Streep. Where do you come down on this one, Sharon?
I don't know. I mean, she's done just about everything in terms of genre. If there's a genre you like, you could probably find a Meryl Streep movie that you would watch and also really like. I think that's one of the reasons why I picked The River Wild earlier, because it's just not something you really expect that would be in her credits. But she, it is, and I think that's something that's important to know. Is she's not just doing accents and being really serious. But do I have a way to a cinematic bridge? Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe you should swing back around to me after you guys have spoken.
All right, Ryan. So I'll put you on the spot then. Same question. Do you have an answer?
Sorry.
The way I wrote this down is two words, which are going to be really funny to say right here. But I wrote down the words, oh shit. And what I mean by that, what I mean is she is the type of person that if somebody says they're going to be in this movie, somebody goes, oh shit, like I want to see that. Or, hey, Meryl Streep's making a movie this year. You go, oh shit, so she's going to get a nomination. That's all that makes sense. But I can only think back. It's so funny that I wrote that down. I can only think back to there's a handful of actors historically that you sort of get that same reaction for. And I think there's a couple that come close. And so somebody like a Dustin Hoffman, who has kind of only made mostly amazing movies, or a Robert Duvall, or somebody I just mentioned, Dustin, I just said it again, Denzel Washington. He's the type of person we go, oh shit, I'm going to love that movie. I definitely want to see that. And so this is one of those things where I don't know that there's a great answer, because she may be the greatest of all time. How do you bridge to that?
By mentioning the other greatest of all time, who I already did, which is Tom Hanks. I think if you're into Tom Hanks and his body of work and you haven't seen Meryl Streep, I think that's a good direction to go. If you're talking, like you've already alluded to, Ryan, watching prestige actors do it well, Tom Hanks has to be in that exact same conversation. Watching a movie from the 80s, The Man with the One Red Shoe, which has Tom Hanks in it and a whole bunch of other people, but man, it has Tom Hanks in it, and that's kind of all that matters. And with Meryl Streep, it's that same thing. In a lot of ways, Indian cinema, which is something I crow about constantly, those movies still are oh, Shah Rukh Khan's in it, I'm going to go see it because it's got him in it. Meryl Streep is of a dying breed of people who their being in the movie is enough. And even, I would even say Tom Hanks, that's not necessarily the case anymore, because he's made just a bunch of random stuff that has been kind of not under the radar, but him and Spielberg are kind of just doing dad movies seemingly for a while, which is fine. But them doing it elevates it above just, again, essentially a very high production value History Channel dramatization, which is effectively what they're doing. But Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks being in a movie together, but being kind of, I would say 1A and 1B of the same coin of this is American acting now. And these are the Americans that are acting that you would, if we were in the Olympics, say, and we could pick two people to put up against the other country's two people for acting Olympics. If Meryl Streep's not the female actor that's on there, what the fuck people were they asking to make a decision is my question, because I don't think there's anybody else. In terms of male actors, Ryan, to your point, like, there are a bunch. Gene Hackman, Robert Duvall.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, like dudes where it's like, yo, you're the guys. Meryl Streep is like it. I'm not discounting everybody else, but I think if you asked anybody else, like go ask an Amy Adams, who do you look up to as an actress? I know who she's going to say. She's going to say Meryl Streep in the first three names she names, if not the first name. Meryl Streep's probably looked up to by her contemporaries as well, which I think is more important than being looked up to by people younger than. But being seen as like the best of a certain group of people, which working in the 70s in this country and acting was like De Niro, Pacino, Keitel, like everybody that we've just mentioned were doing their best work in the 70s. Fucking Deer Hunter, for fuck's sake. So it's hard. I mean, to your point, Sharon, like it's hard because there isn't anybody in terms of female actors, and maybe male is a little bit of a stretch, but I don't think there's anybody else that really holds a candle to her in terms of like being the greatest of all time in terms of like female or actors in general, female, male, whatever the fuck. She is a name that is mentioned with 3 or 4 other names, and that's it. If that. Really.
And what's crazy is she's been that name for almost 50 years.
Yeah. Her entire acting career.
Yep.
Like, and she kept in the private life private, which is still so surprising to me, frankly, that she was able to do that, given how high profile she is as an actor. Yeah, it's like Pat Mahomes. It's literally like you came in and people knew who you were, and that has never changed. It's never gone away. It's never gotten less. Again, 2024, we're still waiting for her to make another movie because she hasn't retired yet. So there's also that. So Sharon, we come back to you. Do you have an answer? I mean, again, I think your answer is as apt an answer as any, frankly.
One of the things that often happens when somebody is as good as she is at what they do, there's a little bit of a backlash, perhaps, that, oh, you know, they're not that good, or everything she does or everything they do is, you know, always too highfalutin. It doesn't come down to earth. And, you know, I'm not saying this correctly, but we as human beings tend to like to knock down the people that we put up on pedestals sometimes. And she has suffered from that a little bit too. She has also been, despite the number of films that she's made over her careers and the number of great performances that she's given, it's hard to say that she hasn't been given her due, but most of the movies that she's made are not real blockbusters. They're not the movies that you're going to find necessarily, with few exceptions, at the top of the box office that used to exist before the pandemic every week, or before streaming, maybe is a better way to put that.
Why not both?
Yeah, actually, yeah, they both are sort of, it's a two-headed dragon at this point, which to me is kind of unfortunate. But nevertheless, so yes, she's highly thought of in terms of her talent. Yes, she's I'm kind of getting off I feel like I'm moving down a different road than what this question is, but I just don't know that there is a bridge, I guess is what I'm ending up saying, because I can't really come up with anything other than to say she has done a lot of movies that are very highly thought of, award winning, but she's also done a lot of crowd pleasing movies that haven't really gotten their due. And I hope that, if nothing else, folks that listen to this will take the time to watch. And I didn't really answer your question, but that's what I've got.
Well, I was disappointed you didn't go that one step further and mention the one thing that we mention on every episode, which is, isn't it funny that Meryl Streep somehow hasn't lowered herself to making an MCU movie yet? Ryan knew what I was going to bring up. He's like, here we go,
what I was going to
boys.
say is, from Sharon, what I was getting from you from that is she needs to make some blockbuster money. So when is she going to make an MCU movie?
Right. You and I were on the same page, Ryan. We're like competing to see which one of us gets to bring it. It was a joke I said on the first episode of this show that we're going to somehow find a way to bring the MCU up every episode, and without fucking fail, it happens organically, because you're totally right. Like, in a lot of ways, I think her biggest movie is Mamma Mia. Like, literally,
Probably.
I think it's Mamma Mia, right?
Yeah.
In terms of
if not,
reach.
Yeah, if not that, then Devil Wears Prada. But outside of that, But part of that, frankly, is she's a woman. And women aren't usually the headliners of the movies that end up at the top of the box office. Barbie was an anomaly, a true anomaly. And that happened for whatever good reason that happened, or whatever reason that happened. But that in and of itself has a lot to do with why she hasn't had movie after movie after movie that's landed at the top of the box office. That's just not the kind of things that you're necessarily going to see a woman headlining.
But whenever
MC
she's in
or
something,
not.
she's often the one who's headlining, though. There is that, at least. That is the important part, right? Mm-hmm. If she's in it, she's on the poster. If she's in it, she's mentioned somewhere heavily. Because I don't know if there's a movie where it's like, oh, surprise cameo by, like, not like a Johnny Depp and Tusk thing where it's like, I'm going to lower myself to putting on goofy ass prosthetics and hiding myself. Like, she's never done that either. It's always been like, Meryl Streep is in this. Okay. Like, there you go. Like, yeah. It's, I think that this, like I said at the top of this episode, like, this was going to be a hard episode to get up to the point where it's like, how do we suggest somebody else here? Because it's very hard. Yeah, but that's a good thing. I mean, again, we're not going to have every actor we're going to have on this show is not going to be a Meryl Streep caliber in terms of like notoriety. I'm not putting down anybody's acting ability, but in terms of notoriety, like there are very few actors more well known than Meryl Streep, if any. So, well,
I'm delighted to have had the chance to talk about her because I do admire her so, and like I said, I just think she's the best, and I'm not alone in that in a lot of ways, but she's unmatched.
Yeah, no, if you take anything away from this episode, it should be that. So yeah, with Meryl Streep firmly in the rear view, and focusing on ahead to the next time, where can people find you, Sharon, when they want to go and find the things that you work on, which they should?
The aforementioned 80s TV Ladies podcast, where we're, like I said, looking back at 80s TV, which has a surprisingly robust number of female-driven TV shows, and we're having a great time looking back on them and having a great time talking with a number of the people who are responsible for bringing those to our TV screens. So come join us.
And the next time you're on here, hopefully we'll have Susan as well talking Penny Marshall movies, which is going to be its own fun bag to unpack. Ryan, what about you? Where can people find you when we're not doing this show together?
I am always trying to find a different thing to promote on these because I do too many things. So I'll say, if you're interested in physical media and want to check out some of the best, the last couple of years I've hosted an award show called the Shelf Shock Rewind Awards. And you can go watch those up on YouTube or in podcast form. They're out there. It's a really great time, and a lot of these boutique labels get behind them. And we've got people coming on to accept their awards and just give some attention to people that do a lot of hard work that never get recognized.
So it's an actual award show. That's what you're saying.
Sure is.
Not a popularity contest. Wouldn't know anything about that. But if something like that were to exist, that might be the way it's done by other people. No shots being taken at anyone in particular. As for me, you can find me at weirdingwaymedia.com, where this show in its audio form is hosted if you don't want to check out the video form. And yeah, like, rate, and review the show wherever you get it, which should be iTunes. If it's not iTunes, head on over to iTunes, like and review and rate the show because it helps us find our audience. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us. This has been fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me.
And as always, we hope you check out our next episode and that you continue to push the boundaries of your interests in film, and we hope that we've helped you in doing that.